Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux kicking off a 50-cent pick five at Del Mar on closing day Sunday with graded stakes action for the two-year-olds going a mile on the turf. Let's throw up the field for the Del Mar Juvenile Turf. It's 100 grander. It's a grade 3. We have 9 competitive two-year-olds in this race, and several of these horses have shown flashes of real ability. I think that it could be bigger and better in the future for some of these.
I completely agree. I think looking at the races, this is probably one of the ones that I'm looking most forward to Sunday at Del Mar. And a couple of horses I think might have had excuses in their last out efforts, but they still raced well. So you wonder with better trips and some of them stretching out in distance if they can take the step forward.
Nice segue to our Timeform US pace projector because, as Ashley mentioned, several of these horses are stretching out in distance. One of them that's not is the 3 Voltage, who has a lot of early speed. But Des Doigts, the number 6, is stretching out. Osage Creek, the number 2. Even the number 1 and Ready to Rumble might show a little bit of speed. It'll be interesting to see if this pace gets quick.
It will be interesting. I mean, we've talked about voltage in here for Richard Mandela having that early foot. I don't think that's going to change. It's just the question of can anyone really go with this one, because it's going to be a matter of the dirt speed translating to the turf, which we know sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And there's a couple others I think they are more likely to just sit off the pace. And I think that Timeform here, in terms of showing that, there's several runners just off of it early on.
The number 1 and Ready to Rumble took a ton of money for his career debut, going 5/8 of a mile at Del Mar. And the son of Street Boss ran quite well because he had a lot of work to do turning into the stretch. And with these two-year-olds, especially in turf sprints, it's so hard to make up substantial ground. Yet and Ready to Rumble is going to pass some tired horses and looks like he finishes with a plum.
He's going to have to change his path a little bit. He was on the outside, but he kind of moved in a little bit. And you could see how his body swayed towards the inside, and then he straightened out once again. And I think it was a positive sign on debut that he took a lot of respect going off at those odds. And stretching out in distance, I'm curious what he'll be able to do, because he does draw the inside in here. Is there the possibility he's also raced with flankers, going to race with flankers again, that he's going to be closer to the pace early on? I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case.
Another maiden stretching out in distance is the number 2, Osage Creek. Now, this horse showed improved speed in his turf debut. He got right up close to the pace. He finished an even third. It was certainly a better performance than his debut, where he was just in way too tough, perhaps, against the speedy Muth. I think he's going to show more upside potential in this race, more early speed. He is facing a pretty tough group, however.
It is a tough group, and I think you mentioned it, though. He did take a bit of a step forward second time out. It was on the surface switch. They didn't change the distance, though, and while you would have loved to see him, dig down deep a little bit more in the stretch, it's not like he was, really tired at the end of the day, right? He kind of held his own, and with horses like that, I'm always curious to see what they can do stretching out around 2 turns, and wonder in terms of position and tactics where they'll have him placed early on.
The number 3, Voltage, another horse that came out of that live Raging Torrent debut. We'll see Raging Torrent a little bit later on Sunday in the feature race, the Run Happy Del Mar Futurity. He really improved on turf second time out, Voltage. Stretching out 3 furlongs, he showed good tactical speed. He took over when produced, and he just goes on his way. A 64 buyer for a second-time starter on the turf, considering all of the things thrown at him, different surface, different distance. I love the way he finishes this race off.
And he didn't even go off favored here, right? I mean, he took some respect on the tote board, but I love the way that he finished the race as well. He is still drawing clear. Everyone else is basically scrambling and struggling for those minor shares. And as you've already alluded to, stretching out in distance like that and switching surfaces, sometimes it's too much too soon, but it was a complete change of tactics for him, and he looked more comfortable throughout the race.
And that prior experience over course and trip could really work to his advantage. Trainer Michael McCarthy conditions both the 4 and the 5. We'll start with the 4, Lord Bullingdon, who's going to try turf for the first time. He debuted on dirt at Los Alamitos. He ran okay to be second in a pretty live race. He's been freshened up since that start. It looks like the most recent workout came in company with Endlessly, who's in this race and has proven turf form. Maybe Lord Bullingdon can take a step forward. Another horse that I think will show good speed.
Michael McCarthy with a slew of runners in this year's edition of the Del Mar Juvenile Turf. And I think the horse can take a step forward. We talk it's a good second place performance, second behind Prince of Monaco, who's had an 81 and 103 buyer in his career so far. And I think it's curious to see, second time out, they're making the surface change already. Sometimes I feel like Michael McCarthy waits a little bit longer and, tries to figure out if this horse really wants the dirt. But for some reason, they must think turf. And you've mentioned has been working out with endlessly. So interesting to see this one. I also thought it was just intriguing to see Flavian ride. Doesn't ride for Michael McCarthy often, but their numbers speak volumes.
C. Singer is up next, and this horse was purchased by the powerful Team Valor Syndicate off his most recent victory, a second out score at Leopardstown in Ireland. What I like about horses coming out of Leopardstown, it's a left-handed course. It has a 2 furlong straight. It seems to play more to an Americanized style of racing, and C. Singer showed good tactical speed, was right up on the leader turning into the stretch. And what I like best about the final 16th of a mile is it looked like he was going to get beat, but he refused to lose. He dug down deep to win by a nose.
Full of grit in that performance. And this one's interesting for Michael because it's a new acquisition of the barn, hasn't been stateside too long. And this is something that we don't see a lot from their operation. They don't get a lot of horses that will make their North American debut with the outfit. And while they're 0 for 7, his workouts, I think they've been, working him out pretty frequently and regularly, which is a positive sign. And, from what he's seen in the mornings, he must think he's ready for a Grade Prix. Sometimes what we've seen, especially at Del Mar, they'll use a softer race, right, for kind of a launching point and then figure it out. But they're already going into the graded stakes waters.
Des Doigts is the number 6. This horse is trying turf for the first time, trying a route for the first time. He was claimed out of his most recent start an open lengths victory on the dirt, but that race was against maiden claimers. So it's a world different competition from a class standpoint. Plus, he might face some company on the lead if they try those tactics.
The one thing that I noticed too, this is a horse that was bred by Wesley Ward. Wesley debuted the horse for a tag. Then, this one's in for 32,000. Wesley obviously knows from a pedigree perspective what he was working with, but also, had a feeling that this horse was in for the tag, not protected, which makes me wonder if maybe this horse is just a tad below the, a horse that would usually be in a field like this.
You might want to keep an eye on the 7 Glandford. This is a horse that has some experience. He's run 4 times. He's already shipped halfway across the world. And while no match for Boltage last time out, he didn't have the cleanest trip. So I think he could perhaps take a step forward, especially if this pace heats up.
We talked about this in a couple of our stakes previews for Saturday at Del Mar, that sometimes it is hard when you come over here. You break slow. You're not used to how things are done here, whether that's the loading process or anything else on race day. And overall, I think if you like Boltage, you have to like this horse. Very different trips. This horse was closing from off of it and can certainly take a step forward. And I would also think going to offer way more value than Boltage.
Here's McCarthy's 3rd entrant in the field, the number 8, Endlessly, a son of Oscar Performance, who worked out a pretty good trip in his debut. It was only a 47 buyer speed figure, but he showed the wherewithal to get right in behind the leaders, and he is unfazed by being in behind horses just a little bit here. The seam is eventually going to open, and once it does, I love the way how Endlessly burst his way through.
You could see he's almost trying to grip the ground right for a little bit because there was no room, almost like he was stalling, and then he was able to take clear aim and get the job done. And the pace wasn't hot, but he was close to it throughout. And I like, again, we have a horse in this race who has a win at a mile, and for him, it was a win on debut.
Bear River completes the field. Now, it's another perhaps example of a Keith DeZormo horse that will improve second time out. And I think this horse gained fitness in his debut, finishing behind Boltage, because he tried to make a mid-race move into the teeth of the pace. He flattened out just a little bit. I think he'll be sharper here. He is going to have to deal with a tough post position.
Don't love the post. I do think, though, he can take that step forward. And as you mentioned, sometimes when you make a mid-race move and you're the one that's sitting just off of it or you're chasing the pace, you're at a disadvantage already, where we see how the first and second place finishers got their trip. One was closing from off of it and one was on the front end. And the barn, as you said, they do well with maiden second time out. But the one thing that I like is that race was just on the 24th. It wasn't that long ago. We're coming back to the races for this. And he actually does have a workout that's pretty reasonable and a pretty nice workout in preparation for this. So maybe they haven't done too much with him. You would hope one workout and that's all, just knowing that there's not a ton of time between these races.
Top pick time for the first leg of the late pick 5 on closing Sunday at Del Mar. You're going with Boltage, and why not? That was just a super impressive turf debut.
I'm just afraid, again, this horse could get kind of loose on the lead. I do think there's situations, though, as we mentioned, maybe and Ready to Rumble and a couple others, Lord Bullington, even the former Wesley Ward trainee. Maybe these horses are pressing him coming out of some races where they were sprints, they're stretching out, they might get in a better position. But I thought just based on that race last time out, this horse looked really good in the stretch.
He's my second pick, and I'd have to use him in the pick 5. I'll go with the X Factor, the 5C Singer. Showed a lot of determination winning second time out. He's now with Team Valor. I think he'll get the mile. We'll see how he deals with a firmer turf course in Southern California, because that could be key for him. 3781 for Ashley, 5327 for me. It's a good one, the Grade 3 Del Mar Juvenile Turf on Sunday. Best of luck.